Hello, everyone, and welcome to African Conservation Podcast. Today with us is Paolo Strampelli, a researcher and conservationist working for Panthera in southern Tanzania. Hello, Paolo. How are you?
Hello, Matteo. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good too. Maybe to start off, a quick presentation of your background. How did you end up in Tanzania?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, so my name is Paolo Strampelli. I am, as you can probably hear, originally from Italy. But through my upbringing, I spent a lot of time moving around, including in countries with some amazing wild landscapes. This was both in Africa and elsewhere. And when I was in secondary school, my family moved to Africa, first to relatively little known country called Eritrea, and then Tanzania. And this exposed me to sort of this world further. I then went to the UK for my studies, but I had already decided that I wanted my future to be here, not specifically in Tanzania, but in Africa. And then yeah, one thing led to another, as often is the case. And yeah, I now find myself working um, here back where I started in Tanzania.
Awesome. And yeah, you said you've moved around a bit. And what studies did you do in the UK?
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting one. I actually did my undergraduate in something fairly different to what I'm doing now. So I studied biochemistry
Okay.
at university, which I did not find interesting at all, unfortunately. And I then decided I needed a career change afterwards. So I spent a bit of time volunteering for a few research and conservation projects in Africa, which sort of confirmed what I already knew, which is that I wanted to go down this path.
Mhm.
I then did a master's in conservation science,
Okay.
which allowed me to start pursuing this academically and then professionally. I then worked for a little bit for a few conservation projects before carrying out my PhD. This was with WildCU at the University of
Oh,
Oxford, but with PhD, my master's was I already knew I mean I was fascinated by a number of things, but wild cats and carnivores, large carnivores was also I was always at the top of my list. So already for my masters, I worked with some researchers in Mozambique
mhm.
and did a study on leopard population ecology there. And then for my PhD, by this point, I knew I wanted to, as part of my PhD, work somewhere wild that had never been studied before. And so I did my PhD field work looking at large carnivore ecology and how to monitor large carnivores over vast remote landscapes, specifically looking at the Ruaha landscape in central Tanzania.
Nice. That's awesome. Hey, is it very different? Like if you do carnivore research, let's say in Mozambique, is it very different, the
Mhm.
situation, the community situation compared to central or southern Tanzania? Is it very different?
It's quite different. It's quite different between most places in some ways, and it's similar in others. So, following my PhD, I worked in for an NGO called Lion Landscapes for a bit in
Yep.
Solunyerere, and then after a bit, I then joined Panthera, and as part of my initial role at Panthera, which was I joined as lion scientist, and my role was to help the different projects
Okay.
all over Africa establish good lion population monitoring protocols and build up capacity of the local staff on that. So as part of this role, I ended up traveling quite a lot. So I worked on projects also in Western Central Africa, which I hadn't been exposed to before. I worked in Zambia. Um, and so to go back to your question, I think what I found interesting is that some things are very, very similar. So for
Mm.
example, the say that if you're doing a population study or you're setting up a monitoring program, you know, some things are a bit copy and paste because, a lion is a lion,
Of course.
no matter where it is. On the other hand, there are some specific characteristics of the country of the people, of the management authorities, of the landscape that vary. So I really do think there's a lot of value in being exposed to how conservation changes and varies across different parts of the continent and of course the world, because some of the things that might work well with some communities in Tanzania might require completely different solutions in Mozambique or in Zambia or in Senegal or in anywhere. So I think it's finding that sort of combination of what can we export to other places and what do we need to develop for the specific characteristic of a new place.
Okay, no, it's very interesting. And if we were to take, let's say, one example, Ruaha, for example, the park is huge. It's a huge place, and I'm sure the lions go in and out. Does it create a lot of human-wildlife conflict, or is the population very scarce, or how is it around the park?
So you're absolutely correct. Ruaha is one of the largest national parks in Tanzania, and in fact in Africa. And it does have an important lion population. But there are some challenges with regards to conflict, especially because in the dry season, most wildlife concentrates around some of the few rivers in the landscape that provide dry season surface water. And some of these, including the most important, which is the Great Ruaha River, is actually located quite close to the park boundary. So this means that quite a lot of wildlife, including lions, do go beyond the park, and it does cause quite a bit of conflict. Primarily because there are a number of livestock keeping tribes that use that area, the Maasai, the Bayabai, the Sukuma. So not only is there quite a lot of conflict, but also the NGOs that are currently there also have to adapt the solutions to deal with the differences between the different communities and the different tribes. And so it's quite a complex landscape, but yeah, a beautiful one, as I think you know.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. When you say monitoring the lions, Panthera, if you look at the name, it sounds like cats. Do you also do other large carnivores like wild dogs, those caracals? I don't know if you do smaller ones as well. Do you have dedicated scientists for each species,
Yeah,
or how does it work?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, Panthera, you're correct. As the name says we focus primarily on wild cats. So we were an NGO that was founded in 2006, and we are our mission is to conserve the world's wildcats, both the large and the small ones, as well as the habitats that they live in. So when we initially started as an NGO, we were primarily addressing knowledge gaps, so understanding which populations of wildcats were most important or were most threatened. And at the same time, supporting other NGOs financially and technically. Over the last decade, we have shifted our approach a bit, and we now implement our own conservation, including across Africa. So at these sites, we do in all our sites, we have a strong foundation of research and monitoring, which includes not just the cats, but also their prey, other carnivores. And this is because at most of our sites nowadays, we partner with management authorities to support protection, mitigate conflicts, so really bring the whole suite of conservation tools. So in order to be able to effectively assess, say, the effectiveness of our anti-poaching support, we need to be able to evaluate the status of the carnivores, the prey, of the wildlife, but also the broader habitat. So our goal is to conserve wild cats, but as I'm sure you know, conserving wild cats, requires conserving the whole habitat. And so, as a result, we have taken quite a holistic approach to conservation. Recently.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So yeah, that conservation toolbox, like you said, it needs everyone, the researchers, the conservationists, the governments, the rangers, the local communities, and the habitat you're mentioning, which is linked to every species living in it, uh, human people included. I'm sure it's shrinking, in many places in Africa. Of course, you cannot generalize Africa. It's a huge continent. But globally and generally, would you say that, let's say, wild cats in Africa are what is the main threat? Is it habitat destruction? Is it poaching? What is it? If we were to choose a few of the main threats?
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, it first of all, I think it's worth mentioning that exactly as you said, it's difficult to generalize in Africa. It's a very large large area, and the threats that might be the primary ones in one country or even in one landscape might be different in others. But there are some parts, especially the ones which are seeing the highest levels of wildcat loss, where the main threat, I would say, is habitat loss, because that's irreversible. So there are some parts of Africa where there isn't much habitat loss, and the main threat is, say, for example, conflict. Some areas of Namibia is like that. But in many parts of Africa, there is a very high rate of habitat loss, and that is, in my opinion, often the worst threat, because it's the only one that's not reversible. Once that habitat is gone, often converted to agriculture or logged, it's very difficult to go back. Countries like there's some countries where this is especially severe. Tanzania, Zambia, Mozambique. All of these countries are facing very high human population growth, and of course, people need to eat. And this, combined with the fact that most agriculture is still carried out at a subsistence level in this country, means that human population growth often leads to someone when independence was declared, we had 10 million people. We are now at 70 million, and the projection is that it will be up to 140 million, so twice what it is now by 2050. So that to me seems that to me is the biggest threat in some of these areas where you're seeing this rapid population growth. But I think the sort of societal development elsewhere has shown that things do plateau at one point. It's just a question of managing resources in the meantime, so that we can hopefully conserve the most important areas and prioritize these. And also, again, look at a holistic approach to development, where we're looking also at more effective agriculture, more efficient agriculture, so that we can promote economic development, which is something that is essential, while also minimizing the negative impacts on the environmental side of things.
Yeah. Clearly, like you said, the habitat, if you take Tanzania, for example, where you said the population is growing exponentially, like so fast, the wild spaces, they remain, because they are not fenced, they get encroached slowly. And I'm sure that land planning must be something that you guys also advise people, along with advise how to avoid too much predation from carnivores, maybe on your cattle, or people when they go out in the field for days with their goats and cattle, they need to make sure they report. Maybe they take a special course, or there's scouts. I know Lion Landscapes, they had this before, like scouts in the bush, and same as Kobe Lion does in Ngorongoro. And there's many solutions. And regarding habitat loss, I've seen and I heard and I read about leopards being very adaptive. And I remember them in Nairobi, like in Bangata or in Arusha at night, or in India, same, like they go everywhere. And do you see this adaptiveness in other cat species, or is it leopard are the specialist of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, before answering about the other
Yeah.
species, I do want to focus for a moment on leopard, because I do think that they are absolutely more adaptable than other species. But I think there's a growing recognition that this adaptability has also potentially been overestimated a bit, because all your examples are 100% true. You have places in India like Mumbai where you have leopards that live within the confines of the city. Same in Nairobi. But what we are also seeing is that there is a threshold above which they cannot survive. And it going back to what we were saying before about differences between countries, it really varies. I mean, in other places, South Africa, you have leopards existing on in very developed areas. But at the same time, through our surveys in Tanzania and elsewhere, we have found that if the communities, the people they're sharing the areas with happen to be a bit less tolerant, or maybe there's a demand for skins, and leopards are targeted, they can disappear very, very quickly from the landscape. So we are actually finding, because, when I started in sort of this field, I was thinking exactly the same, but, I've done enough surveys where we found that, leopards have disappeared in recent memories, or even species such as spotted hyena, which of course are not a cat, but which we nevertheless like very much.
Yeah.
Even hyenas where, I'm told by people in our house, and then maybe, in Dodoma, there's hyenas everywhere, or we have an office now in Tabora in Western Tanzania, same thing, people saying, oh, we hear hyena all the time. And then you ask them, when was the last time? And they'll say, oh, maybe they think about it and say, oh, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So we do see that all the species have of course a threshold. And I think leopards as well, especially in certain contexts, do tend to also suffer a bit more than some people expect. But going back to your questions, I think there's an interesting one out there. I think servals, as a small cat, that I think can be quite resilient as well. They rely on rodents, and they feed primarily on rodents. They can also feed on insects, lizards, and so they can do quite well in semi-urban or agricultural landscapes. I think in Africa at least, there are also cats that are a lot less resilient. So I think lion is one of them. A lot of people, this might be counterintuitive given they are sort of the largest here on the continent, but they're quite delicate animals. They're very loud, they're very visible. So they tend to struggle a bit more to persist in disturbed landscapes or in areas with a lot of people, which of course doesn't mean they can't. As you mentioned earlier, there's some great organizations that shows that coexistence, it is possible, but you do require certain specific conditions, and we've seen them just from the disappearance of lions in so many places in Africa that they are especially susceptible to human pressure and can vanish quite quickly, unfortunately.
Like if you take West Africa, for example, like Pendjari, OW, is there still a viable lion population there? If you want to take lions, for example?
Yes, absolutely. So in West Africa at the moment, there are most likely only 2 lion populations remaining.
Okay.
One is the one you mentioned of the Pendjari, the WAP complex. And the other one is in Niokolo-Koba in Senegal, where we are actually working as Panthera. Those 2 populations are most likely the only 2 left in the region, which is, of course, very concerning and just shows you the level of loss and how quickly it can happen. It was actually a Panthera scientist, Dr. Philip Henschel, that about 15 years ago did a very large field survey of all lion populations in West and Central Africa, and found evidence of lions only in a fraction of them. So going back to your questions in WAP, WAP is facing some significant conservation challenges, as I'm sure you're aware. There is an NGO, African Parks, that are working there, and I think they're doing they're doing a really good job and the best they can given the conditions. But it is a very threatened area, and as a result, the lion in West Africa, which is the northern lion, a subspecies, one of the 2 lion subspecies, is not faring too well. And actually, that's why we're very happy about the Senegal project, because we have managed to finally get lions to be on a bit on an increase there, which, when you've got just 2 populations and potentially 100 or less lions left in the region, is just a really important impact.
So when you say endangered and very rare in West Africa, is the inbreeding is going to be a problem, or the population is big enough to be sustainable? I don't know how you say it scientifically.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, whenever, exactly like you say, whenever populations get small enough, inbreeding can be a risk, and you do end up in situations where you might have to artificially increase genetic diversity by translocating animals. In West Africa, it's uncertain as of yet if that's going to be necessary. In Niokolo, in Senegal, we have reached a point where populations are increasing, and we haven't seen particularly concerning signs.
Nice.
In WAP, unfortunately, there isn't too much clarity on lion numbers just because the current situation makes it very difficult to carry out field surveys. At the same time, you hit the nail on the head. There is obviously quite a large risk. So both we as Panthera specifically and the conservation community more broadly, there are discussions happening about the potential of maybe reintroducing lions to other areas in West Africa, just to increase the number of populations, create a bit more security for the subspecies, and potentially also down the line, it's clear that this is something that will be beneficial for the conservation of the subspecies and the species in
Yeah,
general.
yeah. Now I've got a very, very practical question for you. If
Mm-hmm.
you, or if someone needs to, like you say, enrich the genetic diversity of a lion population, let's say, you bring in a male lion, right? Not a female.
Correct. Normally, I mean, to be honest, it's a combination of both. So quite
Ah, okay.
often these let's say genetic translocation also align with wanting to strengthen a population. So you could have a whole pride being brought, or sometimes you could also move males. It really depends on the individual situation. You know what your objective is, what the number of animals is, if there were
Okay.
any previous translocations. Yeah, depends on that.
Yeah, okay. So a bit of both, but like you would not
Mhm.
move a whole pride of lions, would you? Is it possible?
It is possible. It is possible to move whole prides of lions. There are people that have successfully done so. Normally, as you know, prides consist of females, so female lionesses and their daughters and granddaughters, which end up forming sort of family groups, as well as unrelated males. So it is possible to move the females and the males, or especially if you want to, if you're doing translocation in order to increase genetic diversity, you probably would want to either take the females or the male that is mating with them, so as to ensure, yeah, so as to bring new genes into the pool wherever you're bringing them.
Ah, okay. Interesting. And you were mentioning at the beginning of today's interview that
Mhm.
you used to oversee lion project across Africa for Panthera, but now you're more in Tanzania, right? You're moving a bit less.
Correct, yes. And just to clarify, in case anyone from Panthera listens, I was overseeing the lion monitoring specifically,
Ah,
not all the
monitoring.
lion
Yes. Okay.
conservation. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
So my role before was no, no, it's all good. My role before was to go around and work with the different projects that we have in Tanzania, that we have across Africa, to help figure out, okay, what is the best way to evaluate whether the lion population in this area that we are helping conserve, whether it's through anti-poaching or conflict mitigation, is going up, or is going down, or is staying stable. Now, however, since 2024, you're correct. I'm more site specific. So in 2023, Panthera identified Western Tanzania as the site of potential interest for expansion. So Western Tanzania is one of the largest interconnected areas of wild habitat remaining in Africa. It's over 130,000 square kilometers of interconnected habitat. But we believe from the information we have that it was increasingly under threat. And also we knew that it didn't innovation NGOs as other places did in Africa. As a result, in 2024, given that also there wasn't really a lot of information available from
Yeah.
these areas, these are very wild places. No one has ever done research, has never been there, even just no tourism. As a result, in 2024, we decided to carry out an assessment of wildlife status, but also threats and also management needs. What sort of conservation needs are there here? So we spent 6 months doing that, also in partnership with the Tanzanian Wildlife Management Authority, and we assessed a whole bunch of protected areas and semi-protected areas. And in late 2024, we were invited by the Tanzanian Wildlife Management Authority, TAWA, to explore a partnership for management support in two protected areas in Western Tanzania, Ugalla and Luganzo Game Reserve. And so following that, we registered an entity in country, and in August 2025, we signed an MOU, so an agreement with the Tanzanian government, so anti-poaching support, financial, logistical, but also technical, and wildlife monitoring support in these two game reserves. Although we are now also exploring the potential expansions for the collaboration to also focus on other aspects. So now we started this project last year. We are now we are completing our first year of activity, and I'm quite happy to be living in one place now.
Yeah, I'm sure. And is it like this first year? How does it look? Is it hopeful? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm super hopeful after this first year. The reality is that very often the conservation authorities in many African countries, they're very motivated. They really want to achieve positive change, but often they lack the resources in order to be able to do so. So, the folks, the partners we're working with at Tawa, it's being able to support them and get the patrols out, make sure they have the rations, make sure they have the sort of required safety equipment, make sure they have the vehicles running, doing that, and just seeing the response from Tawa, just seeing the willingness to drive forward it's amazing, and it's made me really hopeful, because it just shows that so often all you need is sort of a helping hand, to provide a helping hand, and then really the systems are often there in place already. So since starting this year, we've supported about four patrols a month in each game reserve, and these are joint Tawa community patrols. This have led to a decrease in the intensity of illegal activity, a number of arrests from bushmeat poachers to illegal logging, illegal fishing, livestock incursions, and we have now. When we started last year, we carried out the first baseline wildlife survey. So we're not able to say with certainty yet that the wildlife populations are improving. But what's certain is that the threats are going down, and so we are hoping to see some positive changes also on that side soon. But overall, super hopeful.
Nice. So for now, you guys are working in both those game reserves. Do you also sometimes go and do monitoring or work in Katavi or Ruaha? How does it work? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So at the moment we are primarily focusing on working in these two game reserves, Ugalla and Luganzo. We have also established partnerships with other NGOs in Western Tanzania that maybe don't have the same capacity for monitoring, but maybe have other skills that we are lacking. So, for example, there's a Swiss NGO called ADAP, the Association for the Development of Protected Areas. And so they have been working in Western Tanzania for over 2 decades, primarily working with communities, creating added value chains. And so when we started our community support activities, such as the recruitment of village game scouts, we carried out some. They helped us out with that, using their experience and build capacity of our staff. And as part of that sort of knowledge exchange, we also carried out some monitoring and provided training to their staff in their areas for both wildlife and threats. So for now, we are primarily focusing
Okay.
and they work in protected areas that are adjacent to ours, wildlife management areas, game reserves, forest reserves. So for now, we're primarily focusing our efforts, given that resources are not infinite, and obviously time is the most precious of them all. As a result, we are focusing primarily on the areas where we have a formal
Yeah.
agreement with the government, or we're partners that have formal agreements with the governments operating. Katavi, yeah, I think in the future there's definitely the potential, the scope to do something there. At the moment, our main relationship, as I mentioned, is with Tawa. Katavi is a national park, so it's under the management of TANAPA.
Yes.
But potentially down the line, I think what for us, we think it's great to do to understand what's going on and do surveys and set up monitoring programs. But we also believe that there's only really the monitoring needs to take place for a reason, right? So potentially down the line, we could explore, if TANAPA, for example, reaches out to us and
Yeah.
mentions they would like us to help them develop monitoring, then yes. But I think because there's just so much need for it, we want to make sure that our efforts are targeted to the areas where we know there is someone that is going to immediately jump on that and basically link the monitoring to the applied conservation activities, whether it's protection support or human wildlife conflict or sort of community development.
Awesome. Do you also work sometimes, like for everything that is science related? Does Panthera bring in PhD students from Dar or Tawiri, or does local
Mm-hmm.
aspiring scientists? Do you see them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I firmly believe that it is one of the most important things we can do for the long-term conservation of this wildlife in these wild places. We have myself, we've and other sort of researchers I'm working with. We trained a few master students when we were working in Salou before. It was actually the ecologists of Salou Game Reserve that were the Tawa ecologists. So we helped them find funding and then carry out a master's using the data that we had collected together. That was incredibly rewarding, and yeah, also they were sort of really motivated. So it was great to be able to help like that. At the moment at Panthera, we are recruited in-house, so all our field work is carried out by our Tanzanian field scientist. So we're focusing on building up his capacity at the moment. And we're also exploring potential for collaborations with Tawa ecologists and Tawiri to do exactly that, to sort of bring in students and all that. Of course, the project is quite new,
Yeah.
but the goal is to do this. We're exploring a few options. There's a few ways in which you can do this. As I said in Salou, we had some ecologists from Tawa that we really wanted to support in this. You can also, however, we're discussing with a few universities, Tanzanian universities. So you can also set up a longer term partnership where each year you make your data available to the student, either with Panthera staff co-supervising or just sharing the data. Otherwise, you can also have a formal relationship with the research institutions you mentioned. So there's a few ways to do that. We have done it differently in different countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, I firmly believe it's one of the most important things we can do. And so for sure, you'll see students coming out of Tanzania using Panthera data soon enough, I think.
Nice. No, it's so nice to see, the youth of each of these countries be proud and learn more and share with the social media, there's so many young storytellers from Africa who share images and stories of their communities, their wildlife, and science also is something that needs to be taught maybe in a better way. I don't know, in a way that is more inclusive of everyone. Because, of course, like you said, funding is everything. But if you guys can help, or there's many NGOs out there, and helping local kids, climb up the ladder. And if they want to become a wild dog scientist in Selu, they can. If they want to go and become a chimpanzee conservationist in Gombe, they can try. It's this message of hope is when it's related to the positive aspect that conservation and research can have on wildlife and the whole environment. Of course, like Ugalla is not Ugalla. It's a whole complex of things. Every place in Africa is like this in the world. So no, congrats to you guys for the work you've been doing. I know it's a young project, but it's very inspiring and hopeful. It's beautiful.
Yes, and I think, Western Tanzania had been, it's an area that had been really under the radar,
Mm.
not just for conservation, but I think there's also potential for
Tourism.
tourism there. Um, and and I think that it's really good that, these lesser known areas also get some attention. Not just for the applied conservation, but also, in the eyes of the governments, we are supporting, I think, it's fantastic that people go to the Serengeti and go to the Salou and the places that are sort of a bit more on the map. That's extremely important and it brings a lot of revenue. But also to show the government that, especially as an NGO, there is, we also put value on the places that are a bit less known, but not for that reason any less
Yeah.
important. A lion living in a low productivity Nyombo woodland in Ugalla is no less important than a lion next to Serengeti and Serengeti. So I think also for the government to see that us as foreign NGOs, we're not just focusing on the areas that historically bring in more revenue and receive most attention, but also on these areas that until now have been conserved by the government. They've been investing in them, but they've been receiving no support from outside. I think it's a really strong message that we must
Yeah.
do.
No, no, clearly, like you said, tourism should like conservation tourism can happen anywhere and not only like you said in Seronera or in Kruger. You can also go to Uganda, to Chad, to there's so many places, the Congos, so many beautiful places that deserve, a better view of the general public. So no, it was very interesting today, Paolo. Thank you very much for this.
Hmm.
And no, I look forward to hearing more from Panthera in
Hmm.
Tanzania. Thank you.
Absolutely, and karibu anytime.
I will, I will. I'll get back to you soon. You have a good day.
Thanks very much, Mathieu. Bye bye.
Bye.